Welcome back. My name is Cindy, and on this channel, I like to talk about all things relationships, romantic and parental. I usually drop a new video every Monday, so be sure to tune in on Mondays for my relationship tips. But in this video, I will be reviewing Married at First Sight, Season 12, Episode 13. So be sure to like this video, subscribe, and click that notification bell. So the couple sit down with Dr. Pepper and Pastor Cal in this episode. There is a lot to unpack. I was completely exhausted by the time I was done watching this episode, but it gave us a lot, so let's jump right in. First, we will get started with Eric and Virginia. So in the beginning of the episode, Virginia's sister comes to visit. She has two boys. And as she walks in, they're greeting her. They're excited to see her. And they sit down to have a talk. And of course, like usual, they start to say how great their relationship is going. Virginia said something about they don't argue and they love being around each other. And it's like, girl, last episode, all you guys did was argue. So I'm not really sure why it seems like the theme of this season is to put on this united front, this foolishness of like being fake with everyone. And when they talk to the other couples or even to the experts, they talk about how great their marriage is. But it's like, when you really look at it, none of these couples have a great marriage. I mean, they all have some communication issues and they all have different issues going on. But anyways, so Virginia suggested that Eric take the kids out so she can, catch up with her sister. And Eric left with the boys and the dog. Virginia's sister was like, is it okay for me to trust him with my kids? And she looks at the cameraman like, don't try it. And as a mom, I completely understand because, this is still a stranger, even though that's Virginia's husband. She doesn't know this man and she doesn't know, how he'll be with her boys. But Virginia reassures her that he really wants to have kids, so things should be fine. Virginia starts to open up and tell her sister about Eric's controlling ways and how he and his dad have the same social and political views, which are very conservative. In the beginning, I was really rooting for Eric, but the whole conservative vibe is kind of killing it for me. In the confessional, Virginia's sister was saying how she feels like they probably have rose-colored glasses on, and she can pretty much sniff the BS that they got going on, because it's like they are trying so hard to convince other people that they have a great marriage that it just sounds crazy, because the minute she sat down, they were like, oh, we're doing great. We're wonderful. We don't argue. So Eric sits down with Dr. Pepper and they're having this conversation, and she asks him, what's the best thing about their marriage? And he was saying how they have great chemistry, how they get along every day. So Eric brings up the issue about the dog Rocky, and Dr. Pepper listened to all that he had to say, and then she was like, why is it so important for you to be this dog's dad? Like, what is it? And he was trying to explain to her that, they're married now, so he should have half ownership over the dog. And Dr. Pepper basically told him he needed to fall back, because she said to him, what if the dog was a child from a previous relationship? Him trying so hard to have equal access to the dog is just too much. And he doesn't necessarily control over the dog. It is her dog. She came into the marriage with the dog. So he needs to kind of ease his way in as opposed to being forceful. And then he mentions to Dr. Pepper that he had asked for an independent person, but he feels like Virginia's too independent. She's always wanting to be out and about, and she doesn't really rely on him. And he was saying how, she works 9 to 5. So she basically lives for the weekend to hang out with her friends. And that is something that is not working for him. He doesn't like the fact that she's hanging out with her friends every weekend. And Dr. Pepper suggests he asks her to set aside 1 weekend a month for them to be together. I don't really agree with the 1 week and a month thing. I think once you get married, there are things that need to change in your life. You know, you don't necessarily have to like never see your friends again, but 3 weekends out of the month, I think that's a little too much. But anyway, so Dr. Pepper questioned Eric about Virginia's drinking, and he was telling her how he doesn't like it. And Dr. Pepper said, it seems like their blow-ups usually happen after they're drinking. And she was explaining to him that, you know, you can't really have a coherent and civil conversation after drinking. And she told Eric, you know, to be honest with Virginia about how he's feeling. But she said, honesty does not have to be cruel. Eric comes across controlling sometimes based on his tone. And I think if he would soften his tone and talk to her more so as a wife than a child, then she would be a little bit more receptive. And Dr. Pepper also suggested that he proposed that they stop drinking for a while to see how their communication is affected. So Virginia sits down with Pastor Cal, and she brings up, you know, that they're having a great time together, their chemistry is amazing, and blah, blah, blah. Pastor Cal asked, you know, what are some of the big issues that they're having? And she brought up the kid thing. She was saying how Eric seems to always, you know, try to give her an ultimatum regarding having kids. And she has a really big fear of being pregnant and being a bad mom. She doesn't want to mess up her kids or have them experience some of the things that she has experienced. And Pastor Cal, you know, told her there is no such thing basically as a perfect parent. You are going to mess up, but the simple fact that she is aware of not wanting to do things that is going to affect her children would make her a great mom. I do think that Virginia has potential to being a great mom, especially I feel like when people are thinking ahead about how they want their children to experience life. I think that's definitely a good sign. They're going to put in effort to give their children the best experience possible. So Eric and Virginia meet up afterwards to talk about what they talked about with the experts. And Eric brings up the thing about the drinking, and Virginia was kind of defensive. She was like, you know, the arguments that we've had would have happened whether or not we were drinking. And I don't fully agree with that. I do think that sometimes alcohol can affect communication, and the simple fact that she does like to drink can cause problems. And so she kind of shut that conversation down and was like, you know, she doesn't want to really talk about it. And then he also brought up the 1 week and a month thing. And she was like, yeah, you know, that's cool as long as we plan ahead. And he was letting her know it's hard to plan ahead because of the type of job that he has. And he was saying, you know, there are going to be times where you're going to have to cancel things to be with me. You know, I'm your husband. And sometimes you do have to cancel things for your spouse. But Virginia was not here for it. She was getting upset. And she was saying how she plans things ahead with her friends, and she's going to be pissed off if she has to like cancel things with them. She has to come to a realization that yes, your friends are important, but at the same time, there's gonna be times where you have to make sacrifices. And if that means canceling with your friends to be with your husband because he just came back from being away for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, then so be it. But I don't know. They didn't seem to agree. Once again, they never seem to agree. And they have a hard time having real and deep conversations. And to me, if you're not able to have those kind of conversations with your spouse, you don't really have a great marriage. Virginia brought up the fact that she feels like every time he talks about the kid thing, he's giving her an ultimatum. She said to him, you know, what if I can't have kids? Like, are you going to leave me? And he said that he wouldn't leave, that he was in it for the long haul. He's always jumping the gun and saying how, well, if you don't like it, you can leave, or I can leave, or this is over. So he definitely needs to work on that. I don't know where that's really coming from. It sounds like he's like trying to throw that in there before she can leave him. So he's like he said, you know, when that time comes, if something were to happen where you can't have kids, you know, we'll deal with that. And that's not something that I would leave you over. But I don't really believe him because I feel like he really does want to have children. We'll have to see what happens. Next, we have Jake and Haley. They actually didn't appear on screen until like the second hour of the show. Like when Jake was on the screen, I was like, oh, I forgot about them. He sat down with Pastor Cal, and Haley had sat down with Dr. Pepper. Pastor Cal had asked him, you know, what are some highlights of their marriage or what he likes? And he was saying how he is physically attracted to Haley, but he does feel like they've been playing by her rules, and he doesn't feel like she wants to have a deep level of connection. He really wants to know what it is that made her pull back. It's really bothering him. Pastor Cal suggested that he ask Haley what her expectations are for a husband. And then we see Haley sit down with Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper asked her, you know, what are the highlights, what she likes. She was saying that, you know, Jake is a good person. He's independent. He's loyal. He's built a great life for himself, but she doesn't feel like she knows him on a deep level. When she was saying that to Dr. Pepper, I was thinking, you know, it doesn't feel like you want to get to know Jake. So I'm not really sure where that's coming from. And then she brought up the fact that she had asked him what he has done in the last 10 years. I don't think he really understood where she was coming from with that. And Dr. Pepper suggested that she be a little bit more specific with her questions. And then Dr. Pepper basically pulled her all the way to the carpet because she was like, it seems like he's making changes for you, but you're not making any changes. And then they flash back to all the changes. Like, he's been drinking a lot more. He was a good sport about the clothes that she bought him. You know, he sat down with the tarot card lady. Jake has made some efforts, but to her, she feels like she's the one coming up with conversations. And like I said, when she's not being specific, I don't think Jake thinks that she cares that much. So he's not really putting that much effort into it. Haley is overlooking what it is that he's doing to try to meet her halfway. And once Dr. Pepper was starting to point that out to her, she starts crying. And what I realized about Haley is that she cannot take criticism. The minute someone calls her out on her stuff, she gets very defensive or she starts crying. And it's just like, girl, stop with the crocodile tears and take some accountability. She was telling Dr. Pepper that she feels like this marriage is a sense of failure to her and she doesn't know how to deal with it. And Dr. Pepper suggested that, you know, she sits down with Jacob and really tries to get to know him. Because up until now, it's like she's been trying to like kind of scratch the surface, but she's not really interested in anything deep. So they sit down together to have a conversation about what they had talked to the experts about. And Haley, Jake had me in tears because as he was talking to Haley, like I can completely understand exactly where he was coming from. And my heart sank to the bottom of my feet. He was saying how he feels like this is the last chance for him to find love. I felt the sadness. I felt the heaviness. And I feel like Jake is probably the best husband on the show. Yeah, he started off being a little awkward and weird and he has his quirks, but he really does want to make his marriage work. And he's willing to work with Haley and to meet Haley halfway. I mean, even more than halfway. He's willing to do whatever it takes to just get to know her so they can potentially have a shot at this marriage. And so Haley asked him, you know, I had asked you about what you have done in the last 10 years. I mean, don't you have any memories with college or friends? And he was like, you know, around 33, all his friends, you know, were settling down, getting married, having kids. And this is something that he has longed for a long time. And it hasn't happened for him. And he was hoping that, I'm getting emotional now, just even talking about it. It's killing me because Jake is actually a really good guy. It was a real vulnerable moment when he let her know that, you know, I am looking to settle down and be married and really start a family. And he really wants this. And so Haley, I think for the first time, connected with what he was saying. And he explained to her, he never thought she was really that interested. So having conversations with her was just kind of like, whatever. It's like, she's never really been that into him. So I think he can feel that. And so when she asks him questions, he's just like giving her one word answers. Like she's just doing it just to do it, not asking questions to really get to know him. He didn't feel like she was being genuine, and I don't feel like she's been genuine this whole time either. But I do feel like they had a moment. And do I feel like they are going to say yes on decision day? Probably not. But I do think that there is potential there if Haley was more willing and open, because Jacob wants to do whatever it takes, but he's also not going to be a sucker where he's going to just kind of let her run over him, which I respect about him. So I'm really curious to see what happens in the upcoming episode. Next, we have Brianna and Vincent. So at the beginning of the episode, Vincent was in bed and Brianna was kind of standing over him, asking him, when is he going to get out of bed? And I think he said something about he needs a couple more hours. And then we see them having a talk about finances. And Bree mentioned that he had just started his business in April. I'm not really sure what month they're currently in during this episode, but it sounded like something pretty recent. And so they had like this spreadsheet on the television screen, which was a little weird. And so they start, talking about different monthly expenses. And Bree was saying how she likes to get her hair braided and she leaves it in for a month and it costs $250. And then she was talking about her waxes. And then she said that she spends $300 to $400 on clothes. And it was like, come on now, Bree, are you really out here shopping every month? Like, once you become an adult, I don't see the need to be shopping for clothes every month. But, that's something she likes to do. And then the budget for entertainment came up and he was like, oh, how about $200 a month? And she was like, that's just one date. And low-key, it's true, because when you go out to dinner, especially if you're going to a nice restaurant, you get your meals and a couple of drinks, you could easily spend $200 on one date. So Vincent was like, okay, how about $350? And she was saying how she wants to still feel like they're dating and that he's courting her. She doesn't want to just, basically sit in the house all the time. She was saying this in her confessional. She wasn't really telling him. I don't know why these people have so much to say in their confessional, but when it comes to talking to their spouse, they don't really express how they're really feeling. She said something about how they don't necessarily have to do things that cost money, but she does want to always feel like they're having fun. So by the time they tally up everything, their expenses were a little over $9,000 a month. I was completely blown away. I was like, $9,000? That is a little much. And so, the whole time Bree was talking about all of her expenses, Vincent was kind of side-eyeing her, and he was letting her know that he likes to save. He doesn't think, spending and splurging is necessary. And she was saying how, she worked hard for her money and she wants to feel like she's enjoying her money. Vincent sat down with Pastor Cal and he was asking him what is going great in the relationship. He told Pastor Cal that they have fun with each other. They take care of each other. Family means a lot to both of them. And then Pastor Cal asked, what are some of the issues? And he was, upfront and said that communication is an issue for them and that his attention span is pretty short. And he feels that Bree is narrow-minded when it comes to talking about business and finances. And he brought up the fact that Brianna likes to wake up early every single morning. And when she gets up, she wants him to get up. And to him, he feels like she's basically trying to say that he's lazy if he wants to sleep in. And Pastor Cal suggested that they just have a conversation about it, because he was asking Pastor Cal, is it wrong for him to want to sleep in because he is usually tired and wants to stay in bed a little longer, but she's very adamant about getting up and starting the day together. Vincent also was telling him how he wants a household for his children to have a mom and a dad, because when he was growing up, he didn't have that, and that he wants 4 kids. And Pastor Cal was kind of like, have you spoken to Bree about this? And then we see Bree sit down with Dr. Pepper, and she was saying their high points is that, Vincent is really caring and kind. He's joyous. If she's having a bad day or is in a bad mood, he kind of helps her to get back to being positive. And she really didn't expect the process to be going so smoothly. She didn't think that she would find someone like Vincent. And then she said the challenges are that, they do have communication issues. She tends to be upfront, and Vincent kind of tiptoes around things and doesn't say how he's really feeling. So she feels like she's kind of always trying to figure out how he's feeling because he doesn't really tell her. Dr. Pepper asked her, what are some questions that she has for him? And she said, she wanted to know why financial stability is so important to him. Dr. Pepper said to her, she gets the vibe that Vincent is a very proud man, and he probably wants to always be in a position to provide for his family, and that Bree should talk to him about the financial piece and get some clarity around it. And then Bree also brought up the fact that he wants to have kids in a year or two. She's thinking 3+ years. They don't really agree about when they should start having kids. Bree brought up the fact that she has high blood pressure and she fears being pregnant and, having complications during pregnancy. And so Dr. Pepper suggests that she talks to Vincent and lets him know about that. So afterwards, they meet up and they start talking, and they talked about how they view money. Vincent was saying how he wants to build a future and save and not spend as much. He's been there, done that, and he doesn't want to do that. He wants to operate as a family who sets goals and have, financial stability. And Bree basically was telling him how, she works hard and she wants to feel like she's enjoying her money. I don't think they had much of a resolve around that. And then Vincent brought up the early morning thing. And Bree was like, well, I think when you get up early, you basically are more productive throughout the day. And that's why it's important to get up early. And he was like, well, what's your compromise? Because there are times where I want to sleep in. And he kept asking, what is your compromise? And so she was kind of like, well, I guess we can go to bed early. Ask vague questions, because I feel like he was hoping that she would say, maybe on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you can sleep in, coming up with a time for them to get up together, agreeing on stuff like that. But she was just kind of like, well, we can just go to bed early. That's my compromise. You basically need to be getting up early. I can see how that is annoying. I don't think it's necessary that you have to get up with your spouse every single day. I think he was looking for specifics around time. If they're getting up every day at 6 a.m., maybe, push it back to 7:30. So they didn't really resolve that either. And then she brought up the pregnancy thing. And the way she approached it was, she was kind of complaining about, how her body's going to change and the fluids and the labor. But I think she did herself a disservice. What she should have done, if I were her, is lead in with the complications that come with pregnancy when you have high blood pressure. Because by the time she brought up the blood pressure part of it, he was checked out. He was just over it, because it sounded like she was just kind of making excuses as to why she wanted to wait and have kids. And he was like, the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be. And then in his confessional, he was saying how he could not imagine being on his deathbed and not having any kids around. Definitely something that they need to talk about some more and iron out, because forcing kids on someone who doesn't want to have kids is not a good idea. Like Dr. Pepper said, ongoing discussions. Next, we have Ryan and Clara. Ryan sat down with Dr. Pepper. He was basically telling her that, their marriage is perfect, and, they get along so well. They have great conversations. But Dr. Pepper called him out on his BS. She brought up the spirituality, and he said how they don't go in depth about that conversation. And then she also brought up the sex situation. And he was like, he doesn't really ask her questions about how she's feeling about them not being intimate. Dr. Pepper told him that withholding intimacy in that way can feel like rejection, a lack of commitment, and that they really need to take the time to discuss these things and have in-depth conversation. It's a running theme this season where the couples are not having deep conversations. They're kind of floating around trying to act like everything is perfect, but they definitely need to sit down and have this discussion. Even in my earlier review, I had said, the religion, spirituality piece is probably going to be a deal breaker for Ryan because he wants to raise his kids in church. His parents are ministers, and I feel like he wants to continue on with that family legacy. So, and Clara, it doesn't sound like she's here for it. In marriage, you don't fix things in one conversation. It's like an ongoing thing that you talk about, and you are open to discussing long term, especially when it comes to things that can be deal breakers. She encouraged him to have a truthful conversation with Clara. So Clara sits down with Pastor Cal, and she was also saying how great things were going and that they connect well and that she would rate her marriage 10 out of 10. And it was like, girl, what you mean? Just last episode, you were venting and screaming about how you're sexually frustrated. So how is your marriage 10 out of a 10? And she was also saying, this is the best relationship she's ever had. I don't see where that's coming from because they seem to be very awkward to me. I don't see any chemistry. It doesn't matter what they say. What is coming across on the television screen is that they are not a match. So I'm not sure where this great connection is, but I haven't seen it the whole season. She told Pastor Cal that she feels like she loves Ryan, but she's not going to tell him. She was saying how Ryan has been in relationships for months, even years, and he hasn't had sex with the person. And it's just very strange to me. Pastor Cal was telling her that being afraid to express love or how you feel due to the fact that you don't want to upset your spouse is not a good thing. And it's really not, because in order to have a great relationship, like they keep saying, you have to be able to be comfortable enough to be vulnerable with your partner and open up to them and tell them things, whether it's something that they want to hear or not. When you're able to have that space to be open with each other, you get to know each other on a deeper level, and you build a better respect for that person because you know that they're going to keep everything authentic and, keep it 100. So Clara has basically been just going along to get along. And like I had said last week, Pastor Cal also told her, you can't be afraid to ruffle some feathers. You can't just suppress how you're feeling just to please Ryan. And so Ryan and Clara have a talk afterwards, and Ryan brought up, the spirituality thing. And she was saying how her dad doesn't go to church and her parents have been married for over 30 years. So she feels like, that can work. If he wants to be in the church, that's fine with her. She doesn't feel like she has to, tag along and be about that church life. And she was also telling him how she doesn't want the kids to feel like they're being forced to have a choice whether or not they want to go to church. And Ryan was like, oh, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But in the confessional, he was saying, I absolutely want my kids to grow up in church. So it's just like, why are you not telling her how you really feel? Like, she's not telling him how she really feels. He's not telling her. It's just a complete hot mess. Then the topic of sex comes along, and here go Clara. I'm just a little sexually frustrated. And it's like, girl, you're not a little, you're a lot. Like, you're big frustrated. So I don't know why you're telling him you're a little frustrated. That really annoys me about Clara, because it's like, you're venting, screaming your head off to the ladies, but then with Ryan, you're just like, oh yeah, basically it's not a big deal. Like, I'm cool, but you're really not. And then she asked him, is sex going to happen anytime soon? And he was like, I don't know. Ryan, they didn't get anywhere in the conversation because it was almost like he wasn't really giving her answers. She's downplaying how she really feels. It's just tiring to see this over and over again. Last but not least, here we go with the shenanigans, Chris and Paige. Oh my gosh. I don't even know where to begin. Like, Chris is just team too much. I cannot with him. He was being so disrespectful, so rude. And can I just say, Dr. Pepper is not here for Chris. I feel like she purposely sat with Paige, because had she sat down with Chris, she would have given him a piece of her mind like for real, for real. So Paige sits down with Dr. Pepper, and Dr. Pepper starts to apologize to her and, basically letting her know they thought when they matched her with Chris that they were going to be a great match. I don't understand how Chris was able to fool the experts, and I'm wondering, did he ever mention that he was engaged 3 months ago? Because if he had told the experts that and they still decided that they were going to move forward with him, then I don't know what they were thinking, because that is a clear red flag. To be engaged 3 months ago and then you're signing up to get married is just crazy to me. Dr. Pepper basically said, Chris is narcissistic and she just was not here for Chris. And she was really disgusted about how he had treated Paige. And Paige was just kind of like, woe is me. Why did this happen to me? And Dr. Pepper had to set her straight and let her know, you deserve better. Walk away with that lesson learned. And that was great advice for Paige, because I feel like she's not really getting the lesson here. She's really trying to act like a victim, and what Chris did to her was very disrespectful, very hurtful, very she didn't deserve that at all. But at some point, it's like, Paige, why are you so willing to accept crumbs from this man? So she starts to talk about how she feels like she got the short end of the stick because there was another person involved. Chris was not attracted to Paige from jump. Whether or not the ex was in the picture, I don't feel like he would have tried to make it work with Paige at all. And for her to it's like she's reaching and grasping for something that's just not there. And then she says that, she wants to sit down with him on decision day because she has a lot of unanswered questions. And I'm sitting there like, I can't take this girl serious. Like, what unanswered questions do you have? At this point, it's like, Chris is a tool, don't get me wrong, but he has been telling her over and over and over and over and over again the same thing. I'm not attracted to you. I'm not attracted to you. I want to be with my ex. I want to have a family with my ex. It's like, what unanswered questions do you have at this point? Because he's pretty much told you from jump that he wasn't here for it. And so it's like, she's like trying to hold on. Paige, can you walk away with the little tiny dignity that you have left? Because you just still sound crazy. So I don't know. Like, the girl said she had 2 therapists. I don't understand what these therapists are doing for her, because she just is very lost, very confused. It's hard to watch and it's really frustrating. So Pastor Cal is sitting and waiting for Chris. He's waiting and waiting and waiting. And then they get to the point where he feels like, okay, let's just wrap it up because he's not coming. And then here he comes strolling in like, hey, what's up? It's like he's walking in like he's some kind of movie star. And I'm just like, oh, here we go. Like, I was disgusted to see him walk in. So I was really hoping that he wasn't going to show up. So he sits down with Pastor Cal, and Pastor Cal is just kind of like, dude, you're really messing up. Like, at this point, it's no longer about Paige. It's about you basically thinking through the decisions you make from here on out. And he had the nerve, the audacity to say to Pastor Cal, out of all the queens, the Black queens, the Spanish queens, even the white queens, how did you guys basically pick Paige? And it was just kind of like, yo, I don't even understand. Like, I was just so disgusted. I was just like, he's really out here degrading Paige like she was like as if she's trash. I understand, he may not be attracted to her, but the way he was talking about her was despicable, disgusting, acting as if he has so much to offer. And it's like, dude, you look like the bottom of my shoe. And the nerve of you to sit here trying to degrade this beautiful Black woman when she's been nothing but nice to you. She's tried to give you any and every chance possible. She's been like going way above and beyond, doing the most. And this is how you talk about her. Like, I was completely just turned off. I was so upset. And it's like, Although he made those comments, I was more upset that the show decided that they were going to include it. They should have just not even included him at all. At this point, Paige and Chris should not be on our TV screens, period. Like, they could have edited that part right out. Lifetime, I don't know what it is that you're doing, but I'm so disappointed in this season, especially with this Chris and Paige fiasco. It's just not, I'm not here for it. I'm not here for it. I don't like it at all. Please comment below and let me know your thoughts about what went down in this episode. I'm just kind of blown away. It is very disheartening how they have decided they were going to have this play out. And I'm really wondering, are they just doing this for ratings? I don't get it. Like, they are dragging this girl, not even through the mud at this point. They are dragging her through like the gutters. Like, why? She really doesn't deserve it. I've been watching Married at First Sight since season 1, and I have to say, this is probably the worst couple, not just on Married on First Sight, the worst couple on TV, period. Like, I have never seen something like this, and I hope to never see it again, because it is just very degrading, and I'm not here for it. But I am curious to see how the rest of the season is going to pan out. Like, I just can't even wrap my whole head around it. But let's get down in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you